And we're back for part two.
Yes. Oh, okay. I think we're already going. Okay, so yeah, so part two, plot twist, everyone. So I think we were talking about you had just brought up, we had talked about like how different it all sounds for everyone. And we were talking about being able to sit into that puzzle piece, that frequency and vibration and becoming that receptor.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Yep.
being able to really like it's that in tune, it's that frequency that we're talking about when we get into those deeper depths of intuition and really starting to feel the cards, feel whatever you're utilizing
Mm-hmm.
to have these readings. And we had talked for a second about bibliomancy, because bibliomancy, we've mentioned before, is one of the easier ones that you can do, but it's also one of the best for really being in tune, for feeling that frequency that you're looking for, because it's all about that trust, not holding that expectation, other than that you're removing all expectations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can also use it, I mean, in tandem with the like the tarot. So, you pull your card and you have your book, which is great, and then you go to your book for words to help describe this energy, right? And some words pop out more, resonate more than others. And that's perfectly honestly acceptable. Like that's just how it is. And not getting hung up on, oh, but it says this. I need to fit this in somehow. I need to make this aspect of the card fit. And it doesn't necessarily, And so that bibliomancy also can come into play with utilizing your tarot guidebooks.
Oh yes, absolutely. And when we start to look at, I love words in all of these senses, because when we can look at bibliomancy and how things work for us, I also find that when it comes to intuition, right now there are a lot of teachings, there are a lot of experiences that are keeping things at a very base level, which we have also talked about in just our moving back and forth. We've talked about that. But when we start to look at words and how they can affect things differently, um, that is when we can start to also understand what each of those vibrations really feels like, where we can see a word or an experience, we can see what cards are coming out together, and we can understand a more expansive meaning of it as we tap further into that intuition, that big part of education, so that way we can understand the complexity that we're experiencing once that puzzle piece has gone in and you become that receptor.
Yeah, so if I could, I'd like to share, I think, a really good beginning step. And in using this step, we're only going to be utilizing yes and no.
Okay.
And it's muscle testing. Okay. And everyone can do this. And so you can follow along if you'd like. So you take your hands, and I like to use my middle finger and my thumb on each hand and make a circle, right? And you connect the tips of your fingers, and just a nice, just a circle. Now interlace them so that they're like interlocked like a chain. Okay. And I want you to think, yes, 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 yes. Just everything in your body, just think yes, right? And now go to pull your hands apart. And what you should find is that your hands stay linked. There's a strength to them. There's a resistance. Okay. Now, with your hands interlocked in a link, I want you to shift to no. No, no, no. Everything, every cell in your body, we're vibrating no. And now pull your hands apart. You should find that your fingers slip through each other quite easily.
Oh, that's interesting. I have never done that
Very
before.
interesting. Okay, so that is there's there's the basic, okay? Your body knows. Your body knows, okay? Now, that vibration, that feeling of yes and no, you should be able to apply it now to ask questions. Ask questions to start with, like, is my name, and so for me, is my name Lane? I should get a solid yes, right? And then ask like dumb questions. Am I a dog? You should get an easy no, right? Start with some easy yes and no's that you know are yeses and no's, okay? So that you can just feel what that shift feels like. So that when you ask another question and make sure you frame it yes or no, um, you should get a clear answer. That vibration is what then you can use for pendulum, yes and no. And that is like the basic building block. You can take it one step further where you're standing and you're standing up straight and you think yes, 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 and you'll feel your body lean forward like a magnet pulling you in. And then reset and think no, no, no. You should feel yourself pushed back a little bit. Like you're like the magnet has been shifted and you repel. And that's where you get terminology in the spiritual world like, well, if I'm leaning into that. It made me lean in. It's a literal translation to my body, my through subconscious, through higher self subconscious into the body knows the answer. And that is like one of the best ways to start trusting your intuition so that when you start
Yes.
pulling cards and you're asking questions, maybe pull your one card and then get your fingers ready for a muscle test to ask yes or no questions that apply to that card. How does this apply in my life? Is it this person? Is it this situation? Is it that? Is it because I feel like this? Yes or no?
I love that. I think that that is a fantastic way to do it. Um, when I learned or when I started tapping into mine was a very similar experience, but it didn't have the chain thing. And I feel like that puts so much more empowerment in it,
Mm-hmm.
having it as like a physical exercise instead of just that internalized trust. You can see it. It's so cool.
It's so cool. And I mean, and you can secretly do this when you're like, in line somewhere and you're like, well, should I do this or should I do that? And so you can frame it like, is it in my highest good to go do this next? Quick yes or no. Nobody knows what you're doing. Um, but what I want you to then, as you practice and play with that, just start recognizing the sensation in the body. Because then you'll start to feel um, how information flows through you. Like we said, the body's a receptor of information. And so I know through my experience, I've learned that when I channel and say something that is like from somewhere else, not my knowing, but I just know it through knowing, I get a shiver up my right arm, and the stronger it resonates, like it hits, the higher it goes up my shoulder, right? Like the skin, like I get like chicken skin.
Mine is in my chest. It's like it's just that same shiver, but it's in my chest and it makes me want to like shake, like
Mhm.
physically shake to get the almost to get the energy off of me because it is
Right.
like we've been saying when we're a receptor, it's like a jolt. It's like a here you go.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. And it comes in different ways, but when I hit the nail on the head, it goes right up my right arm from my like fingertips. And it's like, whoa, okay, yep, all right. That was that was on time, whatever that was. Write that down.
Yeah. I'm reminded of oh, it just painted like such a huge picture for me when you were talking about like doing things in the grocery store, learning to trust yourself more like that. I want to just like went away. But I use similar ideas when I teach bone readings. When we start talking about building bone sets, because ultimately you want to build your own.
Right.
You can get like basic beginner sets or buy pieces for them, but you will add things on your own. Even if you were to buy a full set, you will still continue to add things, add little curios and bone items that you just randomly come across because they yell at you,
Hmm.
which is a different feeling for myself. But when we're talking about being open to our intuition, being open to all of the vibrations, and you become this receptor, it grows in this way, and you can almost hear like these specific things. Not like, of course, not we're not talking like hallucinations and like sentences, but when different vibrations have different feelings, you have a deeper understanding of what type of feeling that is.
Yeah.
And building bone sets, it is so much in that realm of trusting and removing those inhibitions of expectation. And it's so cool to watch people build their sets. It is so awesome. And some things that would have absolutely no meaning for me or you have a meaning to maybe 10 other people that are listening to this right now. And those are also really, really good ways to test it, is to sit with things, understand the different capabilities of them. Part of also what we're going to talk about either today or maybe next week, we were going to talk about potential energy. And when I was reading the energy for the month ahead at the beginning of January, one of the big things that kept coming up was potential. But it wasn't potential in the way that we typically read it, in the way that we typically see it. It was like purposefully holding ourselves back, um, and putting all of our energy into one specific idea in space until it has this random burst and release of blow up. And
Yeah.
that came purely from that intuitive vibe of knowing what things feel like.
Well, and I think that plays into like signs and omens, right? You can get like ask your guides and your deities for some specifics, right? But if you place an expectation on how exactly that's supposed to show up, you might miss the sign, right? And then conversely, you may be cruising along and you see something and it gives you this physical vibrational sensation and it has meaning for you,
Yes.
right? But that same thing to someone else doesn't. So it's a sign for you, but it's not for them, right? Or you see something and you're like, is it? But you didn't get that like rush of energy. So maybe it's not. Maybe it was, not yet. But in the way you're like framing potential energy, it's like throwing it out there and then allowing the potential to build, right? And just
Yeah.
being observant and in this really special like waiting place, you know, so that when it does hit, because you're always least expecting it, honestly,
Yes.
you're like, oh, there it is, and that's taking that yes, no muscle testing, that physical sensation, allowing that potential to build, and then feeling it when it comes and then honoring and just accepting it. That trust, again, trusting that you know what you know and you don't have to know where it came from, because we're just a receptor.
Oh yes. Earth Candy Gems has actually commented and says that they're learning to be open to their intuition, especially more in public.
Mhm.
That's a tough goal.
That is a tough one,
Um,
especially path.
right, right.